It's the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Presented by Climate Power Education Fund. Does big oil care about our streets flooding or our home burning? Not according to an ExxonMobil top lobbyist.
Did we aggressively fight against some of the science? Yes. We were looking out for our shareholders.
They care about profits, not people. Learn more at polluters.exposed.
You're Locked On Coyotes, your daily podcast on the Arizona Coyotes, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome, everyone, to the Locked On Coyotes podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, Rob Liano. Today's episode brought to you by RockAuto.com. Amazing selection, reliably low prices, all the parts your car will ever need. RockAuto.com. When you head over there, tell them Locked On sent you when you go ahead and check it out. All right, today's episode, it is March 11th, Thursday, March 11th. Maybe some of you guys might have that date circled in your mind as the 1-year anniversary of when sports has officially shut down from the coronavirus pandemic. Today, I'm going to talk to several guests on their thoughts of what happened all across sports, not just hockey, but of course we are a Coyotes-based podcast, so we're going to talk, to people from the Coyotes organization, as well as, again, other sports as well. But to get started, we'll go ahead and go to our first guest of today's show. He is the former media relations manager of the Tucson Roadrunners, Walt Ruff. Walt, thank you for joining.
Yeah, of course. Thanks for having me, Rob. Excited to be on.
Yeah, I mean, it's really good to have you on because, I was, thinking about going back and forth on, who to talk to for today's show. And I thought, well, definitely Walt, because we were all at the Roadrunners game when we saw the whole Rudy Gobert thing go down. And I think I was actually talking with Brett Farah about this from the Daily Star. And he actually said that I think you and him were helping out with the Roadrunners happy hour about like an hour before the game or whatever it was, and that's when you saw the Rudy Gobert news come out. What was initially going through your head when you saw a game being shut down, halfway through or whatever, even before the game started?
Yeah, it was really surreal from our experience. As you said, we were all at Tucson Arena. We were I remember it as it was supposed to be one of the biggest weeks of the year for us. I mean, the team was rolling red hot, and we were about to start a series of 4 home games in 6 days. And, I don't know if anybody then knew the severity of what the situation would come to. But of course, as you mentioned, it was about before the start of puck drop for our game, when some of the news started to trickle out. And again, I don't think anybody saw coming what was taking place. We see these, we're all on Twitter every 2 seconds, of course, and we see some of the NBA guys tweeting that there would be a game postponed. And then we were starting to learn more about why. And pretty quickly, it became one of those situations, as I'm sure it was for yourself too. It became one of those moments in life where you'll never forget where you were because of the severity of what was happening. So yeah, there were so many moving parts, and it was just surreal is the only word I can think of to describe it.
I remember when we were talking to Brett right before the game, or even I think as the game was going, we were just kind of chatting back and forth. We were saying, how is everything going to go down at this point? We don't know. I was keeping a close eye on the Pac-12 tournament over for the basketball, and even those games got canceled. And I think I turned to Brett at that point, and maybe I think you're part of this conversation. We're just like, could this be our last game here in Tucson Arena for this season? Like, this feels like it might be the end. I'm not sure if that's the thought that was going through your head at that point, but that was going through my head.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if at 6 p.m. I was thinking that, but certainly I was by about 8:30, 9 p.m., and that just goes to show how quickly things moved that night. It feels like it was a movie almost with how fast things went from being, an NBA game being postponed to then very quickly the season being paused. And by then we were discussing how does the NHL and the AHL handle that. We all kind of just felt it coming rather quickly is the way I could think to describe it.
Yeah, and I think even to me, I think a lot of the moving parts happened even before things started to shut down, before the Rudy Gobert thing happened. And it goes to, what we were doing earlier in that week, as the series was going on with San Diego, I believe it was. And I think, that's when we started putting in the distancing protocols. And I think we started, interviewing Coach Verity from like 10 feet away. We tried to have our phones up there, and everything just felt so different as things started to develop.
Yeah, that's I'm glad you brought that up, because that was another situation where it was like we almost couldn't believe we were doing it, right? Because it's like there's no way this is going to be that big of a deal. And of course, now looking back a year later, it's like, wow, how incredibly naive we were. But at the same time, nobody had lived through something like this, so we were all learning on the fly. But yeah, we were experimenting with things of interviewing Jay at a separate table and then in the back room and having you guys in a separate area. Of course, rather quickly, the norm became doing it through Zoom, but we had a couple interesting days there learning on our toes, didn't we?
Yeah, and it was a challenging experience at first, because obviously, so I think there was a couple time when it was either Brett or me, like we couldn't hear exactly what coach was saying, or one of the players were saying, because our mic was too far away or whatever. So that was a whole learning experience, and this was all before pre-Zoom, and that was Zoom is a whole nother experience now, doing Zoom press conferences.
Yeah,
Didn't expect
Tucson
that.
Arena was really, I remember the one situation we tried, it didn't work out because the guys were working out in the gym. And of course, we have kind of like, although it was closed off, it was the open air gym. The music was too loud. You're right. The one situation, the microphones were too far away. I was like, oh my goodness, what are we doing here?
Yeah, it was all that happened and pretty surreal. And to be honest with you, like, as everything developed, and looking back at it, even though I had that thought, going back to that earlier conversation we were just having, is even though I had that thought to me that this probably was going to be my last Roadrunners game of the season, I didn't think it'd be 330 days until I'd walk back into the arena. Like, I didn't think I'd have to wait until, what was it? Like, yeah, February 3rd until I'd get back in there and start covering the team again. And I'll be honest with you, Walt, obviously, because I know you're not with the team anymore. When I first walked into that arena, like, I almost cried, because I was like, this has been this long.
Yeah, it's needless to say, life has changed for all of us. I think we've all learned a lot of lessons because of it and from it. Of course, I would have loved to be in there when the team got back to it, but things have changed with the world, as it has for everybody, and that's okay. But yeah, I'm glad that the team is back playing. I'm glad that you guys are able to be there. Hey, it's all new to all of us, and we're all navigating it together, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely. And one thing that I'll ask of you too is, as this was going, like, and obviously when the season was paused, there's only so much, almost so much you could do. But what were some of the things that probably that you were thinking of how to adapt? I know the team did, I think, like those virtual, like, NHL 20, like, simulated games or whatever. But what were some of the things that you had to adapt to as this was going, as being a media guy for a sports team?
Yeah, I think one of the things that sticks out to me is, of course, we were all in a situation that we knew we didn't have all the answers to, right? Of course, we had folks asking for media access, and that's stuff that normally we would grant no problem, snap of a finger, set up an interview and move on. But just had to be really careful with how we handled some of the requests and what we could and could not say, who was available, who was not available. Of course, everybody kind of, you alluded to the Rudy Gobert situation earlier, but it really caused everybody to take a massive step backwards and put into perspective, okay, this is not just, it went from a routine Tuesday afternoon interview to ensuring everybody's health and safety was priority number one. Of course, nowadays we hear the phrase health and safety protocols being thrown around left and right. But it was certainly interesting. Of course, there's phone interviews, and as we know now, Zoom. But at the time, it was a whole lot of how can we do this / can we even do this? So it presented a lot of unique challenges that I think a lot of teams are still working through. I wonder truly if some teams will ever go back to some of the access that was granted before all of this shook down. You know, we got so used to seeing NHL scrums with reporters standing right on top of one another, whom are right on top of the players. And then certainly that wouldn't work right now with the 6-foot protocol. But I really wonder if this has changed the future of not only the media, but also broadcasting perspective. So as we all navigate it together, it's interesting to see. It's something we never thought we'd go through, but here we are, and we're living through it firsthand.
Definitely living through it firsthand. But luckily, Walt, we're almost out of it. You know, vaccines are out. You know, people are still slowly starting to get more healthy, and we're seeing the light at the end of the tunnel almost.
Yeah, thankfully. It's been a long year, as you and I both had said. A lot of things have changed since then, but yeah, we just keep plugging along here. Everybody's done a great job of wearing their masks. Of course, everybody's trying to do what they can to pull their weight to get out of this together. And one day we will finally not only see the light at the end of the tunnel, but we will be at the end of the tunnel. And I really look forward to that.
We're going to continue our conversation with a couple of guests and coming up in just a sec here on the Locked On Coyotes podcast. First, Walt, I want to thank you. Stick around for just a sec, but I'll just say this, for example, guys, that I'm sure a year ago none of us would bet on the fact that all of this would happen. But if you want to make any future bets on the on sports, betonline.ag is the place to go. It is the fastest and easiest way to bet on all your sports action. Go ahead, and with NHL is now in full swing, and hey, March Madness is just around the corner. BetOnline covers all of that, has real-time updated odds and props and almost anything you can imagine. Go ahead and check out betonline.ag yourself. Head to the website and use your mobile device. Use the promo code LOCKEDON and get a 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. BetOnline, your online sportsbook experts.
David Harrison here, the Locked On Washington Football Team podcast, celebrating with you a 21 grain salute to a less boring sandwich thanks to Dave's Killer Bread. I don't know about you guys, but when I eat pizza, I eat it for the toppings, not the crust. And when I eat a sandwich, it's for what's inside the bread, not for the bread. But when I throw a sandwich on 21 whole grains and seeds, thin sliced bread from Dave's Killer Bread, it is the epitome of addition by subtraction. That thin sliced bread lets me focus on what's inside the sandwich, but also adds to the sandwich with killer taste, killer texture, killer nutrition, a subtle sweetness, and a seed-coated crust. Dave's Killer Bread is America's #1 organic bread for a reason. It tastes so stinking good. Dave's Killer Bread is made with the highest quality organic and non-GMO ingredients and is power-packed with whole grains, fiber, and protein. Visit daveskillerbread.com to learn more and look for Dave's Killer Bread in the bread aisle of your local grocery store.
Welcome back to the Locked On Coyotes podcast. Just want to give you guys a quick reminder that betting on hockey doesn't have to be a guessing game if you listen to the new Locked On Bets podcast with your boy Q and handicapping expert Lee Sterling. Get daily picks, blowout specials, wrong team favorite picks, and Lee Sterling's lock of the day. Follow Locked On Bets podcast, brought to you by betonline.ag, wherever you get your podcasts. And now here on Locked On Coyotes, we'll continue our conversation on the 1-year anniversary of the big sports shutdown. On this segment, we're bringing in a guy who doesn't really cover hockey, but he is a pretty big name in the sports media scene here in Southern Arizona. And he covers a lot of sports. He's been around, and he was actually in a pretty big hub area when the shutdown happened. Mike Luke was over in the Las Vegas area when the Pac-12 announced that shutdown, and he's also the host of the new Locked On Wildcats podcast. You can listen to that as well. But Mike, welcome to the podcast.
Robbie, I appreciate you letting me come on. I know very little about hockey, but I do enjoy listening to your podcast. That's for sure.
Well, I appreciate you saying that. But let's go ahead and go on with the this conversation of the 1 year anniversary of the shutdown. First, let's get your thoughts on what happened. What was your thoughts when everything was going on that day?
It was bizarre. So we're setting up the pre and the post game, or the pregame show for Arizona Wildcat basketball because again, Arizona's there playing, and I believe they were playing Washington. And you started there was obviously deals or issues with the coronavirus, obviously, but nobody at that point really thought this was going to take the sports world by storm. I mean, this will sound bad, but it felt like, from a distance, this was something that affected other people, like it was for nursing homes, it was stuck in Seattle, all this other stuff. And then you realized really quickly once we're doing the pregame show and the announcement comes that Rudy Gobert, the Jazz center, had tested positive for the coronavirus. And at that point, you're like, oh my gosh, everything just hit the fan. And everyone's wondering what's going to happen from here. And I swear it felt like within 5 minutes everything had been canceled. Obviously it was a little bit longer than that,
Yeah.
but it felt like everything was canceled.
Now I want to go back to that Rudy Gobert moment. That's a kind of a discussion that I'm having with all the guests on this show for today. Is one of the things I was talking with other guys, whereas when that happened, as it was happening, or not really, yeah, exactly when one of the games was shut down. A couple colleagues and I were at a Roadrunners game. So while you were
Right.
in Vegas, I was at a Roadrunners game, and
That's a shocker.
we saw everything happening.
Right.
And we were kind of discussing going back and forth. We're just like, hey, we might not be back tomorrow.
Wasn't it surreal?
Yeah, that was a big surreal moment. And I'm
Uh-huh.
thinking to myself, I'm just like, could this be my last game of the year? Could this be my last game in a long time? I don't know. I don't know what your thoughts were as that was happening.
So I was up there with this was the epitome of a working vacation in that I had a bunch of friends that had gone up there, and I was staying in my own spot, but they had a place at the I think it was at the Venetian, if I'm not mistaken. But so the basketball games get canceled. And you're thinking to yourself, okay, well, I'm in Vegas. So you immediately start thinking, you're like, all right, well, I'm a dude in my 30s. I'm going to start gambling. That's what I'm going to do. And I kid you not, Robbie, within man, by that following evening, Vegas was a ghost town. And our guy, Julio Alvarado, there's a shout out living in Tampa right now. And Julio, not exactly a guy that is scared by much stuff. Julio was out of that city within probably 30 minutes. I mean, he was gone. And I'm sitting here, and you got to remember that I don't know. I'm thinking to myself, how am I supposed to get home? So I end up getting a Flixbus. That's a little bit later on down the line. But I have never seen the amount of panic slash abandonment in Las Vegas. You could see the entire strip, and you could see a McDonald's wrapper rolling up and down the strip.
Oh my god.
That's how crazy it was. And it was something that it, w- that I don't know that we'll ever see again. Honestly, there was no template, there was no chart that you look at saying, "Well, if this happens, do this." There was none of that. It just felt like the wild, wild west.
It went literally went from like 60 to 0 in just like
I mean,
a snap of a
I don't
finger.
even want to say it went to 0. It felt like it went to minus 60. I mean, it was crazy. And you're going, and I'm thinking to myself, all right, I got one more day here before I can get my Flixbus home. So I'm thinking, all right, well, I'm going to the sports book. And then so I go to the sports book, and I quickly realized, man, the only thing that I can bet on is carriage racing. And while I like gambling a few dollars here and there, betonline.ag is always a good spot to
There
go
you go.
through. Um, I couldn't bring myself to betting on carriage racing. So I sat there, and I basically just looked at a TV screen for about an hour because again, I was just in shock.
Yeah, and it's what I find interesting because I was supposed to be there. Like I remember, like we were talking,
Oh yeah. Oh
at
yeah.
our station
Oh
where
yeah. You and T.
yeah,
Yeah.
like T and I over at 1290 we were just like, hey, we might go,
Right.
we might be a part of it. And I think both of us decided the last second. I think just for financial purposes,
Right.
it wasn't feasible. And I think it was in that moment as all that was happening where I kinda decided that, like, "Man, did I did I luck out?" Because I'm a guy in my 20s,
Right.
and, like, the
Mhm.
things that I wanna do is clubbing, drinking, and
Right.
gambling,
Right.
and
You basically all of your vices are out the window at that point.
so I'd have nothing to do this, so, like, the fact that it went from, like, like,
Well,
absolutely
and it was crazy too. So I get onto the Flixbus, and first of all, the Flixbus people were great, but it's definitely it's an interesting swath of society.
right.
There was a guy across the row from me who probably I don't know about 30 minutes into the drive or the ride home starts shaving. And
Okay.
not like shaving with an electrical razor, even shaving with like a Bic. And I'm looking and I'm like, and I look over at him and he basically gives me like the eye, like, what are you looking at? So I turned away and I just basically slept for what is it, 6.5, 7 hour drive,
Roughly, yeah.
something like that. So then I get back and people are messaging me saying, oh, what happened in Las Vegas? What happened in Las Vegas? And honestly, Robbie, I didn't have an answer for them because it turned into a ghost town. I mean, I've never seen out of every city in the world, or at least in the United States, you never imagine that Vegas is going to be abandoned. And that's what happened.
And that's another thing too that, I think there was some questions coming out to, I think I was running the board that day on 1290
That's right.
trying
That's
to
right.
I had to babysit it because,
Mhm.
when last minute programming change,
Right.
you always gotta make sure someone's in there. And I got a call, I'm not sure who, like, it was one of the regular 1290 callers, and he's like, "Hey, why isn't there, like, a pregame show
Right.
or whatever on? Why
So
is
they
there?"
didn't even know.
So, but it's interesting, like, they did know, but they didn't. It was no way. It was like, if you get what I'm saying.
Mhm.
And I was like, "Hey, the games are canceled, right?" He's like, "Yeah, but, like, you have the guys there on site. They can talk. I mean, you have the program open. You can just go ahead and have those guys,
Have a pre and a post for a show that,
or a pregame show, not really a pregame show, but a show that's essentially, news reporting now. You're out there on the field kind of
right.
just saying, like, "Hey, this is what's going on in Vegas right now."
I'll be honest, man. It was at that point, as Julio showed, it was every man for itself.
Oh,
I mean, everybody was looking to get the heck out of Dodge.
I mean, I can only imagine how it was at that
It
point, but
no, it was crazy. And again, it's crazy that it's been almost a year. And again, I don't know in my life, knock on wood, that I'll ever see anything like that again. I mean, I'm sure that we'll see tragedies, catastrophes. I don't mean to minimize either one of those, but I don't know that I'll ever see something like that basically just flash before your eyes where Las Vegas turns into, well, essentially the building that we're in right now.
what at what point for you was it when you realize that this was worse than no worse than everyone else thought? Not, of course, games being canceled
When
aside.
Rudy Gobert.
When Rudy Gobert,
Yeah.
is that when you realized that
Well,
probably sports would be shut down for a considerable amount of time?
see,
Or
I don't want to say that, but the old it's kind of the age old adage that nothing how do I put this? You When something happens that's like a tragedy, if it's not something that you can actually put a value on, it feels far away. It's not to minimize the tragedy, but it feels far away. So when people in Seattle are, getting the coronavirus and you're thinking to yourself, ah, it's contained to a nursing home, obviously hope all those people are fine, but whatever the case may be. But when an NBA player at the peak of their profession gets comes down with the coronavirus and then he gives it to his teammate on top of that, at that point you're like, man, dude, this thing's seriously, because these are guys worth hundreds of millions of dollars in the peak physical prime of their entire lives.
and they still got it.
And they still got it. I mean, Robbie, honestly, it was something so surreal that I again, I don't know that in my lifetime I'll ever see something as crazy as that.
Yeah, I'll say this. I did not expect for us to be, talking a year later how long it's been since we've had fans in the stands
Right.
or
It's funny. So you mentioned T Statman, and T, if you're out there listening, welcome back. Um, but she had actually texted me saying something, "How's Las Vegas?" And then I said, "Well," and then she sent me a picture of a Corona bottle, and I'm like, well, and at first, and obviously it was innocent,
Yeah.
but at first I'm like, ha 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 ha, and then like 12 hours later, if I could have sent back a different emoji, I would have, because it was just, it wasn't. I don't want to say that it was scary, but it was uncertain.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, we're all such creatures of habit, and being in a spot like that where you don't even know what your next move is, that's the part that really creeps you out.
Absolutely. Well, that'll probably leave it for this part of the conversation.
Hey man, I'd actually like to come back on. You know what? If you actually give me give me a hockey person or something to research, and I will. But Robbie, I really appreciate you letting me come on, my man.
Before we let you go, though, I want to let you guys. I want to let to give you the opportunity to go ahead and promote the Locked On Wildcats
All right. Well, Locked
podcast.
On Wildcats is fun. I when it comes to sports, I'm a real nerd. I like specifics. I like being able to talk, and I think that's how I've kind of at least been able to get some sort of following in this city. My role now at the radio is, well, it's drastically different. Not good or bad, that's just the way it is. Locked On Wildcats has given me a platform to be able to do what I like, and I can't thank you enough for cluing me onto this. I like everybody here. It's basically given me a new lease on my sports life, and you should check out Locked On Wildcats. Where we talk, we're coming up here. We're going to be talking about obviously the NCAA notice of allegations, all that. But there's a lot of stuff going on with Wildcat athletics, so give it a look, and appreciate the shout out.
How can people follow you on Twitter?
You can follow me at Iron Mike Luke, and you can follow the Locked On Wildcats Twitter page. They're working on it right now, giving me a few images, and once I get those images ready, we're going to be rocking and rolling on that. But yeah.
Once again, everyone, Mike Luke joining us on the Locked On Coyotes podcast. Thanks again for sharing your perspective on the coronavirus shutdown that happened exactly 1 year ago today. Coming up, we'll just give some final thoughts on some of the lookbacks, and as well as just take a look a week ahead at what's coming up for the Arizona Coyotes. We'll come to that in just a sec, but first let's talk to you guys about rockauto.com. Guys, I know you guys are super frustrated about trying to find car parts and going to a chain store and being turned away. They don't have your part for your car, or you have it, but it's like, it's going to take you 5 days to get it, or it's going to be, 10 times as much as you thought it was going to be. There's got to be a fix for it, and there is. It is called rockauto.com. Go and check it out yourself. All you got to do, rockauto.com. Put in your car and truck information, and it gives you the full catalog of every part that fits your car, but it's listed all so intuitively that you know how to search for what exactly you need from each aspect, from your ignition, from your to your body parts, to oil, to other fluids. It has absolutely everything listed there, neatly organized, completely easy to use. Anyone can use it. The best part is the prices are phenomenal. You can easily save yourself up to 50% on a part that you would normally probably spend if you went to an auto parts shop. Just abandon those shops now and go to rockauto.com for all your auto parts needs. It's a family-owned business, so it's always love supporting those kind of businesses. So again, guys, go ahead and check it out yourself. Go to rockauto.com and see what fits your car or truck. And when you're over there, go ahead and write Locked On and their How Did You Hear About Us box so they know that we sent you. Amazing selection, reliably low prices, all the parts your car will ever need. rockauto.com.
This episode is brought to you by HP. Whenever you do your best thinking, the HP Spectre X360 is ready when inspiration strikes. With power save for battery life and focus mode to multitask, you can do your best thinking whenever and wherever it happens. You can't always schedule when and where you might have a brilliant thought, whether it's in the morning or before bed, when you're at your computer or away from it. Thinking can happen anywhere and anytime. The HP Spectre X360 2-in-1 convertible PC with Windows 10 saves battery life for whenever an idea hits you. HP Spectre X360, a more thoughtful laptop.
All right, guys, it's time to give a little bit of final thoughts on this show. Once again, thank you to Walt Ruff, former media relations guy of the Tucson Roadrunners, as well as Mike Luke of Locked On Wildcats for coming on to the show. Really appreciate their time. I had another guest lined up, but due to time constraints as well as their own time constraints, I was unable to get them in time to talk about their perspective. But again, the perspective that we had already, I think it really tells a lot of where we were at that point exactly 1 year ago. Like I said, the conversation I had with Walt, for example, talking about us being at the Roadrunners game, where we were essentially, as the Rudy Gobert thing happened, that all unraveled, and like he said, it probably wasn't going through his head exactly at that moment, but at that time for me, I was like, this could be my last game as a covering the Roadrunners for quite some time. I don't know. But it was all a surreal moment, guys, that 1 year ago, and it doesn't. And I know some of you guys are probably thinking, 1 year ago? Why doesn't it feel like 1 year? It feels like forever ago. It feels like that, was like a million years ago. But at the same time, it also feels like it happened just freaking yesterday. I think because all of that is just ingrained in our head. It's like, how does that feel so recent yet so far away? Because of how much of an impact it made on all of our lives. The day that sports shut down, we all had to wait so many days until the bubble came back. I was over, what was it? Just 140 some odd days. It was over half a year. Essentially, it was like 4 or 5 months until sports came back. Again, for the smallest bit, and then you had, baseball slowly coming back. Of course, you had the return to play in hockey. You had the NBA coming back. Absolutely no fans, cardboard cutouts, Zoom press conferences, everything happening, everything different in the sports world, in the sports media world. Nothing was the same from that point on. And I don't think any of us would have thought exactly 1 year ago today that we'd be where we are today, talking about this and how much of an impact it made on sports, and how much we appreciate sports as well. I said to this, in the middle of the summer, that if sports would have come back, I will no longer take those, Tuesday NHL games that happen to be on NBC, that happen to be between the Ottawa Senators and the Detroit Red Wings. Obviously, it's not going to happen this year because of divisions, but I'm not going to take that for granted anymore because it was taken away from us. And now again, we're way over the hump. We see the light at the end of the tunnel. Like I mentioned before, we see that light at the end of the tunnel. Vaccines are ahead of us, and people are starting to get vaccinated, and we see the end is near, and we see the hope coming up. I cannot wait for the day to go back into an arena. Like Tucson Arena, for example, is going to start allowing 10% capacity, 650 fans into the next home games for the Roadrunners. 650 fans, definitely not a lot, but that's a step in the right direction. See, that's what I love about what's coming on here. Of course, the Coyotes have already allowed fans. They've, since the beginning of the season, again, also I think it's 20% capacity or whatever it was, allowing 2,000 fans, or almost 3,000 fans actually, into the Gila River Arena. So super positive things coming forth very, very soon, and I am looking forward to it, and I'm glad that all this is almost behind us. I can't say it is behind us, but it's almost behind us, and again, we can look back on what happened a year ago and reflect on what actually and how it changed all of us. So again, I really want to thank Walt Ruff and Mike Luke for coming on today's show to help give their reflections and their memories on what happened on that day. So that will just wrap it up for today's show. I want to thank you guys for listening to today's show. And you know what? I'm going to go ahead and give you guys a chance to tweet at me at RobLiano1 or at LO_Coyotes. Let me know, what were you doing on that day? You know, when the Rudy Gobert news came out, the NBA shut down, the NHL shut down, everything started to follow suit, and sports officially shut down because of this coronavirus pandemic. Where were you exactly 1 year ago today when all of this happened? I want to hear from you. You can message me if you want, but I like the interactivity on right there on Twitter. So go ahead and just tweet at me. Again, that's at RobLeano1, ROBLEANO1. And again, let me know, what were you doing on that day? So thanks everyone for listening to today's show. If you liked what you heard, also don't forget to leave a good review and to subscribe if you've yet to already. We are available everywhere you get your podcasts. And like I said, if you not just to answer my question, but if you have a question for me, go ahead and tweet at me or message me, and I will go ahead and maybe answer you directly or answer them on a future episode of the Locked On Coyotes podcast. Again, I keep trying to preach this interactivity because I think reaching out to you guys and you guys reaching out to me, it really helps build this show, and I love the people who've already reached out. I really appreciate it. You guys are awesome. You guys, again, like I said, you guys help build this show. Thanks again, everyone, for listening so far this season and again in today's episode. Hope you guys are staying safe. Hope you guys are also staying healthy. And don't forget to howl on.
Preseason games don't count, but they do lend clues to who will be a contender. Here's what our local experts are locked on today. The New England Patriots opened up the NFL preseason with a 22-13 win at home, and the Pittsburgh Steelers got a 24-16 win over the Philadelphia Eagles. Our local expert in Steeltown, Christopher Carter, has his takeaways and analysis of the trade for linebacker Joe Schobert. Listen or watch Locked On Steelers on YouTube today. NFL Super Bowl odds are out from betonline.ag. The Kansas City Chiefs are the favorite, followed closely by the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Today on the Locked On Chiefs podcast, it's game one of the preseason, but they are still looking for signs that this team is ready to win it all. It's official, Kawhi Leonard has re-signed with the Los Angeles Clippers 4 years, $176.3 million. But will he play next season? The answer is on the Locked On Today podcast. All the sports news you need in under 20 minutes. Follow Locked On Today, wherever you get podcasts. Local experts on the biggest stories. It's the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.